So if you'll first just state your name for the record.
Yes. Okay, so it's not pronounced like it looks. It's Layla. And it really is a Swahili, and the Y is pronounced like an E in Swahili. So it's Layla. If you say Layla, it's okay. I get it every day.
Thank you. So have you decided whether you would rather give an opening statement or a closing statement?
Closing statement.
Closing statement. So we'll save that for the end. Counselor McClinton is going to kick us off with a couple of questions for
All
you.
right.
Hey, Ms. Hamilton, how you
Okay,
doing?
great.
Thank you for applying, stepping in the arena. It's a big deal for the community. I think what makes our city so great is a great school district, and it starts with a great school board. I'm just gonna ask two questions, and some of these questions I think Counselor Driver included in your packet. One of them is about the desegregation order that Hoover took on years ago when it wanted to split off from Jefferson County. We always hear, I'm sure you being on the foundation, you always hear about how we have 54 different languages spoken in the home. We're very diverse. But these 5 green factors of faculty and zoning and facilities and transportation and extracurricular activities, the school board and their attorneys have to constantly show to the DOJ, the NAACP, and so forth, that we don't have a dual system, one for blacks, one for whites, which
Right.
to me, in my opinion, is kind of antiquated because I think we're past that. But we still have it there. It's lingering. In your experience on the foundation, other stuff I've seen you do, volunteering, what do you think is the best way going forward to get us out of that order to prove that we are not a dual system?
I've learned a lot about this over the years, and I really believe that it's going to be just intentional action on our behalf, making sure that we are doing the steps needed to make sure that every student gets equal access to everything. And when you talk about equity, it doesn't mean that kids are getting exactly the same thing, but they're getting exactly what they need to achieve academic excellence. We need to have programming that shows that we're diverse, such as the multicultural fair that they had at Hoover High School a few weeks ago. That's incredible. Hoover, we are a very diverse school district, a very diverse community, which is why we came here. And I feel like if we're just very intentional and we make sure that we don't show any differences between race or learning style, that eventually we will find unitary status.
Thank you. And my second question, I'm sure you've always heard about having a third high school, but we also have a great thing called RC3. Do
Right.
you think that with all the things we have at RC3, cyber tech, the trades, culinary, fire college, and other things like cosmetology, I think automotive comes on next year.
Right.
Do you think that investing in another RC3, like a 2.0, is the way to go?
I don't even know if investing in another RC3 is necessary. I feel like we just need to expand it. I mean, if you feel like we need to have an RC3 2.0 just because there's not enough space, maybe that's the case. But I think we just need to expand the trades. I mean, it's incredible having the automotive part that you were discussing and the cosmetology and the barbering. That's awesome. But I mean, and looking what we offer, why haven't we thought about plumbing? Why haven't we thought about building, constructing inspectors, an aviation academy, or just aviation mechanics? There's so many other options. And so if there's space on that campus, don't build another one. Don't, fix it if it's not broken. Just expand upon it.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Hamilton.
Hi,
Just a
thank
couple
you.
of quick questions. What do you believe to be the roles of a school board member?
I think the role of the school board member is to learn and listen to the community, listen to the parents, listen to the teachers, and listen to the students as well. And I feel that the school board members, they have to make policies, they have to make decisions, and those policies and decisions should be determined by the data. It should not be determined by feelings or political affiliations. It really needs to be just solely based on the data, and it's not a me situation. There's no I in the Board of Education. It's if there is some kind of a split between the board, you don't walk away with a chip on your shoulder. The majority said this, and you were in the minority of it. The board made that decision. So I feel like it's just really listening and basing all the policy changes and decisions on data.
Okay, thank you. What do you feel is the most important issue facing our school district, and how do you plan on addressing that issue?
The one that I feel is most pressing would be safety, and that's more than just physical safety, but that's emotional and social safety as well. I will say, as far as the physical safety, the SROs, I think we need to make sure that we continue to foster that partnership with the Hoover Police Department. And side note, FYI, Officer Yarbrough is the best, in my opinion, and I think everybody at Trace Crossings would say the same. But as far as emotional and social well-being, I think we can all agree that there's been a lot of mental health challenges, increase in suicide rates, and our students just aren't doing well. And a lot of times it looks like the student might be doing great. They might have excellent grades, achieving a lot of things, and we don't know what they're struggling with. Some kids are falling through the cracks, and we don't find out until it's too late. And so I spoke with Terry Coleman, who is the director of all of the student counselors, and I was asking her, what do you need? What do you think y'all need? And she said, universal screening. And so there's a company called Renaissance, and they do universal screening, and it's this digital platform, and it does assessments, and it helps to identify students that either need math or reading intervention, but it also identifies students that have emotional and social problems, and they could be at risk of getting worse. And this data is highly reliable, and they can take this data once they figure out which students need intervention, and then it gives them a step-by-step plan. And so, I mean, I think she mentioned it might be $100,000, but based on what she thinks, and I believe her, that this would be something very necessary for Hoover. That's one thing I would think of. The second thing that I think we should consider is something called students mentoring, or students partnering with other students. And basically it's this nationwide program where the students are trained to be peers, mental health peers, and they can talk to their friends. They are trained on mental health facts, and they can encourage their friends and their peers to see a trusted adult. So that would be, this the peers helping one another. And I think that's important for kids to be able to notice when their friends might be having problems. I know my middle schooler told me recently that one of his friends that he's been friends with many years since Trace had been acting differently. He was dressing differently. He saw him crying in the hallway one day, and he asked him what was wrong. And the little boy was being bullied, and he was trying to fit in with this different group of kids, and they weren't accepting him. And he said, "I don't want to be here." And my son didn't know what that meant, but he just knows what has happened before. And so he encouraged him to go see Miss Gibson, the 7th grade counselor, and he did. And he ended up going home that day, and he returned the next week, and he told my son, "I'm feeling much better." So I think teaching our kids how to sense, when something's wrong, and just encourage that person to see somebody would really help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Murphy?
All right. How are you doing?
I'm great.
So 2 questions for me. In K-12 education, what are your thoughts about library material, books that's in the library? Should it be regulated? And concerns around that at all? What's your, no right or wrong answer, just thoughts.
Yeah. As far as regulation, I think we just need to make sure there's nothing that's above the maturity of the students that are in that particular school. I know my 9-year-old, we don't let him watch anything above PG at this point. So I wouldn't want him to read anything that was above PG in that case in the library. So I think it's based on what age group they are. But at the same time, I like how the students, or the teachers for that matter, let the parents know, hey, we're going to be watching this movie, reading this book. If you have a problem, let me know. So giving the parents an opportunity to make that decision as well, I think that's important.
My last question. What's your thoughts about the elimination or to abolish the Department of Education and the impact of that.
Right. Whew, that's a lot. I think there's no right or wrong answer to this one either. I feel like we just need to prepare ourselves. If it does happen, I know that the federal government does give us money. It's not as much, I know, as we would like for it to be, but I think we might need to make sure we're prepared to have alternative resources. We might need to partner with private and public partnerships, and it's going to take a lot of our community helping us. I know that a little over 50% of our funding comes from the community, and we're just going to have to get our community to give more. I know when the foundation, our big fundraiser is coming up May 2nd, Derby and Dining, and if we could just encourage our community, our neighbors, to come out and support that, take part in the silent auction. The PTOs have incredible fundraising, and instead of just getting the parents to help with the PTO fundraising, get the neighbors to also help. So we're going to have to find alternative funding if it does happen. And I feel like we just need to make sure that we maintain the excellence of standard that we have with our academics, and also make sure that we maintain the student-teacher ratio that we have.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Ms. Hamilton.
Hello.
Thanks for applying, and thanks for being here with us.
Thank you.
If you're appointed to the board, you most assuredly will be approached by a parent of a student with a personal matter, be it against a principal or a concern about a particular teacher.
Right.
How would you address that for the parent? Because you are representing parents in your community. So how would you represent that and resolve it for the parent?
That actually happened today, even though I'm not on the board yet. A mother approached me because she was upset that her student, or her son, as well as another mother's student, they haven't been able to get an IEP for either one of their boys. And she was very frustrated with it and said that she didn't feel like she was getting support from the assistant principal, and she didn't know, what she should do. And my suggestion, should this happen again sometime down the line, would be, I need you to reach out to, the principal if it's the assistant principal. And if that doesn't help, then you need to go to the Board of Education, or talk to not the board, but the superintendent, and see if the superintendent can do something. Obviously I'm not going to make any promises or any decisions on my behalf, but hopefully if she goes to get other information and resources, if that's something that needs to bring brought up to the board during a meeting, so be it, but I'm not going to be making any decisions at that moment.
My final question is regarding school funding. It's been discussed for a number of years about holding a referendum and allowing the taxpayers of Hoover, the residents of Hoover, the opportunity to vote on increased ad valorem tax. If appointed, would you support allowing the citizens of Hoover to vote to increase taxes on themselves to further fund their schools?
Well, I think that kind of goes back to the conversation we were talking about, the dismantling of the Department of Education. If that happens, again, we're going to need more money for our students, and we move here, for great education. If we're going to continue to support our schools, that's just going to have to happen. And then also you have to consider the COVID-19 fund, has been exhausted, and we still have to figure out a way to make sure we don't have to dip into our reserves, and continue to maintain that standard of excellence that Hoover has. And I know with that money, that was used to get 16 part-time interventionists, I believe. And I know that they're going to continue having those 16, and I believe you guys hired another 12 or so, maybe more. But I know there's already a commitment to keep them. But I think the community should be able to vote on that, and I would hope that they would vote to increase, because we want to protect our schools. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. How many Board of Education meetings here in Hoover have you had occasion to attend?
I have been to one in person, which was this week, but I will say the beauty of having the meeting streamed on YouTube is fantastic when I'm a Uber driver for my kids, and also I'm able to download the minutes online. That's fantastic. But also being on the PTO for 9 years, being involved with the HPTC, Hoover City School Foundations, I find myself in rooms with superintendents, with principals, with other PTO presidents, and I get to hear other perspectives of what's going on in the school. And I've seen city council members at some of those meetings, and I know that the superintendents come to some of our Hoover City School Foundation meetings. So while I might not be present at the board meetings this year and I just listen to it via YouTube, I do know a lot about what's going on in the community based on the organizations that I've chosen to involve myself in.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've noticed as part of your observation of those meetings online
Mm-hmm.
and otherwise that sometimes there can be a lot of criticism or disagreement. How would you handle disagreement or criticism, especially in a public or emotionally charged environment?
Saw a lot of that during COVID. I felt bad for all school boards across America during that time. And I know it would be hard in like a political climate like that or with parents being upset. I remember my very first school board meeting, the superintendent, Kathy Murphy, was there and it was talking about the rezoning, and that was a very hot topic and a lot of upset people in Hunter Street Baptist Church. But I feel like it's just important to maintain your cool. Again, we're not to be swayed by emotions. We're swayed and we make decisions by data. And I think that's just important to be able to be emotionally intelligent and know when to keep your cool and just listen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if you had a situation where you were on the board and the board was divided on a key issue, how would you work to try to resolve that?
Well, I'm not quite sure how from what I've been told, the board members cannot meet with more than two at a time because that would be a quorum. So I'm not quite sure how they would make a decision. I just kind of feel like, and I could be wrong, that it's based on the information that I know. And I think if you can meet, with one board member at a time, I suppose that would be a great way to kind of toss ideas and get ideas on how everybody is feeling. But if there's a disagreement, which, like I said earlier, whatever the majority says, that is what is ruled, and you accept that and you move forward as a board.
All right, thank you. And whenever you are ready to give us your closing statement, we're ready to listen.
Okay. So I've been in Hoover for 16 years. With my pharmaceutical company, I had the opportunity, they were moving me and had the opportunity to move anywhere in Birmingham City. And we looked everywhere and we chose Hoover. We chose Hoover because of the excellent academics, the teachers. I mean, we have the most decorated teachers, in the state, which is why I know a lot of schools are trying to steal our teachers. And then also the diversity and the real world experiences. I went to a private school and I didn't get a lot of real world experiences. And I wanted my boys to have that. And I felt like Hoover provided that more so than Mountain Brook or Homewood or even Vestavia. So that's what we chose here. And we've been very happy being here. We've had incredible principals and teachers and counselors, and we've really enjoyed it. And so I've been in the pharmaceutical industry. And right now I sell a drug for metastatic breast cancer. So I have the opportunity to teach doctors and inform them on how to use my drugs so that women can live longer and have more memories. And I'd love to be able to use the business acumen and the financial and strategic planning and the cross collaboration that I do to make Alabama a successful state for my company and make Hoover successful in our community for the Hoover City Schools. I have been mentoring kids since I was 18, and I was already advocating for kids as a freshman in college, working with kids in Birmingham or the inner city Birmingham public housing. I actually spent 3 years before getting into pharmaceutical sales working as an outreach specialist in Title I schools in Birmingham City, as well as public housing, and man, those areas were rough. But in that position, I was partnering with teachers and parents to help them. Those children were at risk and they needed help. And then before then, while I was at UAB, and I say this not to toot my own whistle, but I created an organization called Generation Excel, and it had small, humble beginnings at UAB, and I got students to try to be mentors to students in the Birmingham area. And eventually that grew until I partnered with Alabama Attorney General, his Mentor Alabama program, and we had hundreds and thousands of college students helping all across the state and making a difference in kids' lives. And I say that because I understand the power of community and getting people to collaborate together to ensure that every student has equal access and they have the right to getting a great education. And we're so excited to be here. And I did want to leave you with one story. And I met this mother yesterday, and it was just by chance. And she knew nothing about me. We just met, and I hadn't told her anything about who I am or what I do or what I was going to be doing tonight. But she told me they were new to Hoover. They moved here in August. And their daughter, they adopted her at age 4. She's from Thailand, and she came, and she didn't know how to speak English whatsoever for at least an entire year. They lived in Crestwood and went to Birmingham City Schools to try to get intervention to help their daughter, and they had horrible experiences at 2 different schools. So they went to a private school, could not get the help that they needed. The private school didn't have those options or those resources. So they found another private school, I'm sure y'all know, Spring Valley, and they help kids with learning disabilities and different learning styles. And so they went there for 2 years, but it was a stretch because it was $20,000. And the daughter was getting bullied because it's a very small class. And the daughter actually told her, I want to go to public school. And the mom was like, not Birmingham City Schools. And their therapist at the time said, you should look into Hoover. I think Hoover can really help you. They have resources that are just fantastic. And she was like, we are not moving our family just to go to another school. And she's like, no, really? She said, my child is at Shades Mountain Elementary. And she said, it's fantastic. Just go take a look. So the last week of school in May of last year, she and her husband and the daughter at the time was in 4th grade, and they did a tour of the school, and the daughter's like, this is it. This is where I want to be. So between May and the first week that school started, they picked up their family, and they moved here to Hoover just because of that. So the daughter was doing relatively well when she left Spring Valley. She knew math. Excellent. She knew math. But all of a sudden, at Shades Mountain Elementary, she was doing horrible in math, and they couldn't figure it out. And so the teachers and the counselors spent time with her, and they realized she has a language barrier still. That's why it was word problems, and she couldn't figure it out. And so they put her on an IEP, and within 4 months, she was able to get the hang of it because they spent so much time with her. And now she's not on the IEP anymore, and she's about to graduate and go to Berry Middle School. But she said, Hoover saved our life because she was not able to get that anywhere else. And she will scream to the rooftops how fantastic Hoover is. And I thought it was just so timely that I heard her message yesterday, and just wanted to share that with you guys. And thank you for your time. I've had a great time.
Thank you very much. Well done.
Y'all have a good one.
Good evening.